mission-driven work. So.
Hi, I'm Reagan Flippo. My title is much shorter. It's just Director of Operations for the women's basketball team at CBU.
Good morning, I'm Clara Loud. I'm Professor of Kinesiology here, the volleyball coach, and that is my team. We're sitting out there, so yay, volleyball. I think that's about it. So real short title.
Mine's even shorter. Hi, I'm Nikki. I'm the women's tennis coach, and I also teach here at RCC. I have one person here so far. There's supposed to be a few more from tennis.
Hi, I'm Megan Bottoms. I'm an associate professor here at RCC. I work with student activities and ASRCC. And then I also teach on the side in leadership studies and in sport and ethical leadership.
Hello, everyone. Peyton Williams, Director of Athletics here at Riverside City College. Prior to being here, I'm an Associate Athletic Director at Azusa Pacific. Really enjoy having the opportunity to oversee a wonderful department and be able to serve a great college and campus.
All right, thank you all for being here today. And here's our women's basketball team coming in. So, home opener tonight too. So, okay. So first, I want to start off with the definition of Title IX. If everybody does not know, so excuse me for reading, but the definition of Title IX. So, no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving financial assistance. So that's kind of what we're going to be covering today. Our panelists will speak on, equality within sports, but not only athletically, educationally too. So the first question will go to our AD Peyton Williams, Reagan Flippo, and Megan Bottoms. We work in a forever changing world of athletics, obviously, but what remains steadfast is equal opportunity for everyone, specifically in this educational environment. So Peyton, we'll start with you, then we'll move to Megan, and then Reagan. In your own words, what does Title IX mean to you?
Thank you, Nico. Thank you to everyone for coming and taking part in this. Also, as people were coming in, our district compliance officer and Title IX coordinator, Lorraine Jones, did come in, so I want her to be recognized. So a round of applause for Lorraine. Title IX is something that, even though it's been around for 50 years, it's been something that always needed to be in place, something that continues to strive and move forward to give opportunities to all. And from an educational aspect, to give an opportunity for everyone to have the opportunity to strive to be the best person that they can be with the gifts that they have been given. And before Title IX, that opportunity wasn't there within the educational aspects, and making sure that it carries over across the educational channels, whether we're talking about a classroom, whether we're talking about a court or a field or a pool or another extracurricular activity in arts, making sure those opportunities are always there. And it's something that we all strive for here. It's something that people all strive for, whether we're talking about our college or our district. And we know that there are still rooms to go. I mean, we're looking at a situation where we have a wonderful group of panelists who are all serving in athletics. The two males that are here are athletic directors. There should be more women that are athletic directors. There should be more women that are coaching females. There should be more opportunities and aspects where the work that is being done, whether it's educationally, where women make up more of the student body than men, or athletically, even here with our 19 sports, 10 of those sports are women's sports. We continue to push forward, we give the opportunities, but we always have to look on how we can provide more and do it in a way that makes the experience better and best for all.
Thank you, Peyton. Megan?
Yeah, so Title IX is interesting because I have grown up in sports. Sports has always been available to me, and I am not too much younger than Title IX. So the fact that there are, like, my mother couldn't participate in the availability of sports that I could is something that is very top of mind, right? Like, and so that is something to think about too, that it wasn't very long ago. It's only 50 years. So I think that's really important. But I think for me, Title IX is more than sport. Title IX is the ability for me as a female to be able to show up in an educational system and to be given the opportunity to compete, or the opportunity to sit in a classroom with my male counterparts, the opportunity to be in an educational program that was typically reserved just for men. And so it's more than just sport. It's the opportunity for us as women to be able to be seen for who we are, but also the benefits that we give to society. And so it was so much greater than just athletics. And so that's a wonderful part. But I think if we reduce Title IX to only athletics, we're forgetting about the opportunity that you get to sit in a classroom and pick a major and to do the things that you want to do because Title IX was put into place, because Patsy Mink decided that, it was important for a woman or a girl or a female to be able to choose her own destiny and to be able to get the type of education that she wanted and to be able to get the type of education that was equal to her male counterparts. And so while I love the opportunity that I have gotten to participate in sport as a softball player and a gymnast, I would be remiss if I didn't think about the fact that I have a doctorate now because I was allowed, or I was given the opportunity to pursue an educational opportunity that might not have been present to me 50 years ago. So.
Thank you, Megan. And Reagan.
Mine will be just short and sweet, but Title IX for me is I have a job right now in athletics that probably would not have been a job 50 years ago. Of course, it would not have. But, and so these women fought hard for us to have these opportunities and the same resources that men also do in sports and education. I'm grateful for the progress that we have made to allow women to pursue all of your passions and whatever that is. And that wasn't an opportunity, and now it is. And you can pursue your passion in not just your sport, but also academically. And I've been able to have a career that I'm extremely passionate because of Title IX.
Perfect. Thank you very much, all three of you. Okay, we're going to keep moving along. This next question is going to be directed at our head coaches. So while terminology within specific sports changes throughout generations, and Clara, we've talked about this multiple times, your return to coaching, I had a couple laughs about it, but the ultimate goal of the sport remains the same. You want to win, but a coach's role is education, development, and molding young minds. So, Suzette, let's start with you, if you don't mind. In comparison to when you played and coach now, how has the perception of Title IX changed since your playing days and when you first started coaching? And secondly, how did Title IX help you achieve your goals, both academically and athletically?
Well, I was really fortunate to have a family that supported you to play in athletics, and grew up with two brothers, mom and dad. They all pushed me to do what I wanted to do. So in a sense, I was being pushed towards women empowerment then without the title, right? And I would say that is one of the biggest changes I've seen in terms of the perception of it, because as a young athlete, I didn't even know what Title IX was. I mean, quite honestly, it wasn't really spoken about as much. You heard about it, but it wasn't really out there. We didn't see these girl power and girl bosses that I see up there. Like that wasn't out there. Okay. And in the beginning, I think the first time I had any kind of interaction with Title IX was as a student athlete, as you are, sitting on a SAC committee, because we had to figure out how we were going to find the funds to continue to support in the way that the law was written. And the solution was to cut other sports. Okay? And so initially, I think there was some sort of backlash. I don't necessarily think that the funding piece of it was really well thought out. And there were, articles about wrestling programs being cut. And this, for our school, it was a skiing program that was going to be cut so that we could support. So the framework to support at some of the institutions really wasn't there in the beginning. And so I think that what's changed is that instead of let's bring down so we can equal it out, now let's lift up. And that's really been, I think, in the last 25 years, I've experienced it being a head coach out here in Southern California, one of the biggest, I think, changes and exciting changes. In addition, you ask, how did it help me? I wouldn't be a head coach of 2 sports at an institution without it. I went through licensing courses and educational courses where I was the only female in a group of 200 men. I had no female coaches growing up. I had one female coach when I played basketball in college, and that she was the only one. And so the role models, I think now, that I take that really seriously in terms of empowering and uplifting the educational piece and the athletic piece of the student athletes that I get to interact with, male and female. Not just empowering our female, but can we empower our males to understand the importance of it? So, I think that's where I'll leave it in terms of how it's helped me and the experiences I've had and the perceptions I think that have come kind of to the forefront now.
Thank you so much. Clara, how about you?
Well, I think I'm the senior member here on this panel, so I can go way back to where I remember when Title IX was instituted. I was only 9 or 10 at the time, but I still remember it because it gave me opportunity to start playing sports. The only sport I got to play when I was growing up was softball. That was it, and that was the city softball league, and that's all they had for girls. We couldn't even play Little League. We had to play softball, and that was it. And I'm okay with playing softball. Little League wasn't a big deal for me, but in high school, when Title IX first came in, the women were under the AIAW. That's I think it was the Association for Intercollegiate Athletics for Women. So in high school, I played under the AIAW. The NCAA didn't take over women's sports till 1980. So when I entered college and ran for Cal Poly Pomona and played volleyball for Cal Poly Pomona, that was the first couple years the NCAA was even active in women's sports. So Title IX has been really impactful in my life just because I had the opportunity to play, and not only play, but get part of my education paid for. Granted, it wasn't a full ride, but it was still a part that I got to experience. I got a scholarship, and very few girls women at that time were able to get scholarships. Where if you take men's and women's basketball had way more scholarships than the women's side. And that's what Title IX was created for, is to create that equal opportunity. Not to eliminate sports, because you don't want to eliminate sports, because once they're gone, they're really difficult to come back. But they wanted to be an equal opportunity for the women out there to, hey, we got some great athletes out here that need to play and can showcase. And you guys, all your teams out there, you see the WNBA, you see the beach volleyball, you see softball, and all you guys have never known anything but opportunity. And that's part of all the work from all the early pioneers and the women that took responsibility and said, you know what, we're just as good as the guys. We need to get out there and we need to have the opportunity to do this. And there was a coach at Cal Poly, Darlene May. She coached the women's basketball team. And she really enlightened me on Title IX as well, because when she played basketball, she played in the dingy gym, and she played with the flat balls because they didn't have the budget, or women weren't allowed to play. And an interesting statistic, in 1972, women's sports received only 2% of all athletic budgets out there. And I thought, wow, that's nothing. When you think now, especially when you think of the budgets the football teams have out here, and granted, they bring in a lot of money, I get that too, and they need more money because they've got more players and more teams, but the opportunity for women now is just huge. And for me, coaching these girls, when I first started here at Riverside, I coached, and then I went off and did some other things, and now I'm back coaching again, is really important. Now it's like, you know what, you guys got opportunities that I never had, or I barely had. And now you guys should take advantage of that. And yeah, you think, oh, it's just basketball, or yeah, it's just volleyball or softball or tennis. And you know what? No, it's an opportunity that you have, that you're one. I mean, think of all the students here at RCC. You know, what do we have, 20,000 maybe? If you look at all the students, you're one of 20,000 that gets to play a sport. That's pretty incredible for all you guys. And that's what Title IX is for. And that's where it's become. And I know it's going to keep on evolving. And I know your kids are going to see something different. And as women, don't ever forget that you have an opportunity then. Don't take it for granted. So that's pretty much what, you know, for me, it's given me the career to coach, to be an administrator, to be a professor. You know, when education was a man's world, and now it's not. So I can appreciate it for all the opportunity that I've had in my career and as I keep going. So thanks.
Thank you, Coach. And Nikki, your insights.
Well, you ask about perception, and perception's a funny word because perception depends on who you're asking, right? So coming from me, you're probably going to get a different answer as a female than if maybe I were a male. Well, my perception is that when I was your guys' age, in 1972, I was born. So I didn't even, I mean, I may have taken a history class or something that they talked about Title IX, but I had no clue. I was able to do what I want. I was able to, you know, play tennis. I was able to play softball. I was able to play soccer. I was able to play a multitude of sports without any issues, without knowing why. And it's interesting because now that I'm up here doing this, this is, you know, you look back and you're like, okay, the why is because someone else did the work for me. And how do I be politically correct? Yeah. So my perception is that you know, it's a good thing, and you know, if I'm so blessed. I'll just tell you my story. It's the easy way to answer this question. So I played tennis my whole life. I came to RCC because I was very young when I graduated from college. I had opportunities to play tennis at a lot of big universities, and I decided not to do it, and I came here. And it was a great experience for me. Well, after playing here for 2 years, I was able to go away on a full scholarship to play Division I tennis, and that was amazing. On my team, there were 8 of us that had full rides, which is crazy because you guys, there's only a few people in the room that understand tennis. Well, 6 people play on the team, okay? So there's 2 people that are basically riding the pine that are getting their education completely paid for. That is amazing. It truly is. And do those people want to be playing? For sure they want to be playing, but they're getting their education paid for. And like people have talked about up here on the panel, how it's not just about athletics, it's about education too. Well, that wouldn't have happened in 1972 because I think it was 1% or something like that time of people that were getting money to play, you know, college sports. And then now to where I am today, you know, it's crazy. I mean, we have such great jobs. We are so blessed. And, you know, after I got this job here, I've had people say, oh, do you think you got that job because you're a female? You know, and I've heard that from both sides. I've heard that from women. I've heard that from men. So, you know, it's an interesting question about perception. And I was trying to keep it, you know, non-political and everything, but it it is. Yeah, it's political. And, you know, I'm so grateful for the people that came before me because I've had the best life because of, you know, the things that I was allowed to do and the classes I was able to take and the people I've met along the way. It's been huge.
Thank you very much to you 3. Okay, the final question, before I ask it, I want to remind everybody, we have a banner over here. If you haven't had a chance to fill it out, we want to know from everybody what Title IX means to you. So when you have a chance, walk up to that banner and write what it means to you. We have some good answers up there: strength, women's empowerment, equality and empowerment, girl bosses. So good answers. We want to hear more. We would like to hear from everybody. So the last question will go to our NCAA administrators. So obviously it's the 50th anniversary of Title IX, and it should be Title IX should be honored for the next 50 years and beyond. So I'm curious from the NCAA admin, how do you support Title IX on your campus? And Rachel, let's start with you.
Okay. I'm going to touch on just a couple of things. And one of them is small and one of them is pretty big in my mind, but they're both meaningful. Late last year, I was invited to be part of the NCAA Women's Water Polo Championships Committee. Now, if you're not familiar with women's water polo, it's a cross-divisional sport in the NCAA. It's not Division I, it's not Division II, it's not Division III, it's all divisions. I work at a Division III school. So I got to be part of a committee that was organizing and preparing for the championships that included top Division I schools as well. So it was a pretty eye-opening experience for me. Went to the University of Michigan, big campus, big athletic facilities, big everything. It was a cool experience just to kind of see things from a different perspective and to see how other schools do it. Well, 50th anniversary of Title IX, the NCAA provided some banners for University of Michigan to promote the 50th anniversary of Title IX during the Women's Water Polo Championships. At the end of the championships, I coyly asked, could I take one of those? And so, yes, I went and cut one off the wall and rolled it up and got it home. So then I took that banner to our early season compliance meetings for all of our teams and asked all of the women to sign it. Similar to what Nico's asking you to do there, instead of writing the thoughts about Title IX, I just said, hey, if Title IX impacted your life in a positive way, would you sign my banner? Well, I got a pretty good response, as you can imagine, from the women athletes. Got a lot of signatures on that banner. I took that banner, I hung it in our commons, which is our cafeteria. So it's hanging in there for everybody to see. And it's just a small, quiet little reminder about the impact of Title IX, particularly for women athletes. So that's a small thing we did on our campus. And I'm very excited that that got hung up in a public space for people to see and to be reminded about the 50th anniversary of Title IX. As you've heard, Title IX is incredibly impactful, not just to athletes, but to women in general. Second thing I'll mention is we recently inaugurated our first female president at the University of Redlands. Without Title IX, she would not be our president. It's a very small thing in a very big way, right? It's important to remember that. It's a big moment on our campus. And one of her first questions that she asked the director of athletics was, when was the last time you all did a Title IX review? And he had to coyly say never, because we didn't have the support financially from anywhere on campus to do it. And it's a pretty big investment. It's something you have to be willing to pay for and invest time and energy and everything else to it to do it right. So she said, let's get it done. And so she backed us on that financially, as well as to make it a priority for her in her first year with us. And that was huge. Our athletic director had wanted to do it. I had wanted to do it, but we ran into some obstacles. So have the president, our first female president, ask us to do this was really influential. So with her help and the help of our general counsel and other folks on campus, we hired Good Sports Inc. to come in and do a non-biased review of our campus, our department, our facilities, and everything else. And it's really important that we're doing this so that we can be mindful and aware of things that we need to change. Now, whether we have millions of dollars to invest into a Title IX revamp on our campus, that's not the point. Her goal is going to be to provide us with good, meaningful changes that we can do on our campus to address the things that we need to address. So I'm very excited and proud that we're doing this Title IX review. It's a long process. It's not an easy one. It's something that takes a lot of energy and time from the AD, myself, our Title IX coordinator, and other people. But it's a really important thing. And I look forward to reading her report and applying those changes to our campus.
Thank you, Rachel. And then, same question to UCR administration, Wes Millett and Michelle Almazan. Hopefully I pronounced that right.
Sure. So I'll start, and Michelle and I will kind of share. So just wanted to echo Rachel's comments there. In all my years at Cal, I cannot tell you how many Title IX reviews we went through. and how not managing the equity part and with sport by sport leads to millions of dollars in lawsuits, millions of dollars in settlements, and millions of dollars in fields needed to be prepared. In particular, I was at Cal when we dealt with the field hockey situation and the softball situation. We told our administration after going through the review, hey, listen, simple and plain, we can build a field, upgrade softball's facility, it'll cost us this. Upgrade field hockey's, it'll cost us this. If you don't do it, it's gonna balloon to this. And sure enough, they didn't do it. Read the clippings on it, from a few years ago, and you see how much it ended up costing. So before I begin, just when Michelle and I will be brief, because I know we want to jump to the Q&A with everybody here. One thing that I think it's important for everyone to understand is that as an athletics director, everything falls on your head. You are responsible for the whole operation, okay? Everything. So I know everybody in our program, I know all our student athletes, all our coaches, all our staff. I know what gets people going. I know what puts them in a bad position. And everybody's aligned in understanding how things work. Specific to Title IX, we make sure that we go through, in terms of how we work with our university, there's a number of things we do, which we'll talk about in a moment. But specific to Title IX is not just about equity and opportunity in sport. It's also about sexual violence. It's also about making sure we're in compliance and making sure that our female student athletes and our female students are afforded every opportunity to be successful. And there's a lot more that goes with that. One thing I will say, and I know it's always tough during the day, but whenever we do our discussions with our campus on sexual violence and sexual harassment, whenever we do our discussions on, Title IX, and we're talking about gender equity and we're talking about all these important topics, there's one key factor that we always have to make sure. And I know this is not an indictment on any way, shape, or form, but the men's teams need to be here. That's one of the biggest issues that you run into, because especially with dealing with everyone, when we talk about sexual violence, sexual harassment, it's always geared toward the women. We focus our efforts on talking to the men as well, because they need to understand the role they play in all of this. And also, to everyone's point earlier, Title IX is not just about equity in sport. It is so much more. So, Michelle will talk to you about the role of the senior woman administrator, and then I'll circle back on how we work with our chief compliance officer on campus and our chief compliance office on all things Title IX related, and then the new NCAA policy that everyone needs to be aware of, when it comes time to transfer or go from high school to college and or junior college to a 2 to 4-year school or a 4-4 transfer. So, Michelle?
Yeah. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about the role of the senior woman administrator. You have a couple of us here on this panel. We wouldn't have this position or this job if it weren't for Title IX. And the role of a senior woman administrator is to give a voice to the women on campus, to give us an opportunity to essentially have a seat at the table. Wes is my boss, he's our athletic director, but he treats me as a partner. I get to go to the council meetings. I'm a representative for our university. I am an advocate for women's sports, but also for equality. And remember, being equitable isn't always equal. It's looking at what are the opportunities that our men have and what are the opportunities that our women have. That doesn't mean they're the same, because you have different strengths, you have different needs. You don't need exactly the same thing, and different desires and wants. And part of Title IX is making sure that we're giving you those opportunities. If women come to our campus and say, even if we have the same amount of participants, but they say, hey, we really want to develop this for women, then we have to consider that and look at that to make sure that we're providing the opportunities that the women want and need, and can we fulfill that? There's a lot that goes into Title IX and the administration and the implementation on campus, and that's my job. That's like a big part of it, and it's fun. It's kind of a cool job, but we have to do several reporting. So not just going through the reviews, but annually we have to submit reports to state that we're in compliance with EADA, OCR, and all these regulations to ensure that we are giving equitable opportunities to our males and females, and that involves scholarships, that involves practice times, that involves gear, that involves travel. If our men get to go to Hawaii, are our women giving those certain opportunities? If our men just had this amazing opportunity to go to Australia, they fundraise for that, but now we're looking at, okay, where are we gonna send our women? What are we gonna do? And we're bringing teams to Mexico in the spring because of the opportunities that we have, but we have to look at those things and make sure that we're following that. And as little as when we're looking at practice times and field access, specifically with soccer, we alternated times with our practice, but that created an unfair situation due to certain majors that were offered on campus that were during those practice blocks where we had to continually search and seek, but also it had to do with the sun in their eyes during certain times in practice. And are we being equitable to both programs? And what's right with that? So there's so many different nuances and things that we have to look at, because at any given time, someone can come in and say, hey, I think we have a Title IX issue. So literally Title IX comes up in my life probably 10 times a day. I'm looking at it. I have someone outside of campus that I'm reporting to. And I love it because it's important. And personally, Title IX means so much to me because we have a voice, we have a seat at the table. I remember being young, my auntie, I'm a basketball fan, so love basketball. I remember going and watching her play when I was really little, and she was one of those first recipients of a Division I college scholarship, and that's cool to me, and I wanted to follow in her footsteps, and it was because of those strong women that I had that opportunity. I grew up in sport, and there's men that believe in Title IX that give us those opportunities too, but we earn them, and that's what I have to say. Like you deserve that opportunity, you deserve that voice. I've had the opportunity to go to NCAA conferences, and I'm right up in there in the mix. And oftentimes we are the only women, but you better believe that I'm in that room. I'm in those conversations after. I'm drinking whiskey with the boys. Sorry, am I allowed to say that? Because we earned that right. We're there. And you should be proud of that. And Title IX gave us that opportunity to do that.
Right, and the last thing I'll say, to Michelle's point, it's a person of color from the East Coast. I know what it's like when you are fighting tooth and nail, because mediocrity is not acceptable in the seat I'm in. You have to be beyond exceptional. And so people know, as an AD, I lead with love, joy, passion, and integrity, and purpose. Those are the 4 pillars that I lead by every day. But at the end of the day, my job is to coach the coaches, build and develop the staff, grow and mentor the student athletes, be a great partner to campus and the community. If I do those 4 things correctly, everybody can do their job. And if everyone does their job correctly, we run the risk of minimizing the amount of issues we've had. In the last 2 years, we went from double-digit Title IX and OCR investigations to 0, because we have a complete alignment with everybody in the program now, and we don't play around, right? It's like, yes, we work hard. We are the smallest program in the Big West Conference in terms of staff by 1/3 of the next smallest school. We are the least funded. We have the minimal amount of resources available in terms of facilities, but we're beating everybody now. And we're beating everybody because we make sure, whether it's Title IX, whether it's other issues around equity, whether it's how we're recruiting, everybody is aligned. And when everybody's aligned on the mission, which is to build and develop student athletes for opportunities in life through sport, 1 sentence, not 5 pages, not a book, mission, 1 sentence, build and develop student athletes for opportunities in life through sport. When everyone is aligned on that, you don't veer right or left of center. Everyone stays on the same page. And to that end, when we look at the new NCAA policy that is out now, student athletes need to know this. The new policy is requiring athletes at all levels, anytime you're transferring or being recruited, that you have to disclose if there's a Title IX investigation or disciplinary history that you have been part of. If you don't disclose that, then that's where I call it the Baylor rule, right? Not even jokingly. Like with all the stuff Baylor went through a few years ago, all of us here know what that's about, right? They had to clean up their program, clean house, and start over again. But we will not, I tell all our student athletes, we will not have Title IX infractions. And we don't discuss it, but I just dismissed 3 individuals in the last 2 weeks due to Title IX infractions. So once we get the report back, and this is the last thing I'll say, sorry. When there's a Title IX investigation, our job, we are mandated reporters. We are not to investigate. We don't ask questions. We take the information and we report it up immediately to the top of campus, to the Title IX office. They take it from there, and Title IX and sometimes student conduct will conduct an investigation around what's going on. When they come back with their answers and the review is done and they have their verdict, we then let the student athlete involved, if they're a student athlete or coach, know what the verdict was, and then we take action from there. Ours is a zero tolerance policy, which means you lose your scholarship or you're fired. So that's why we don't play around with it. So just making sure that folks know, and to Michelle's point, for those, when you get in, and this is why it's, and I know I'm not, this is not indictment, but it's important for the men, student athletes and coaches to be in the room, because it's important to understand that, you said earlier about perception, right? When I did a lot of media training, I told people one thing: perception is reality for people, and their reality is influenced by how they experience you. So if they experience you, if you want to change their perception, you have to change their experience. And how do you change how they experience you is up to you and understanding how you show up in that space. So if your perception of Title IX is based on myth, rumor, misnomer, or something that you think it may be, when you're faced with a Title IX issue or you're dealing with issues around equity, how are you going to know if you're not educated and you don't have the experience in dealing with it or talking with people about it? So again, I would, gladly talk to the men's teams too, but it's important for them to know. So it's not just the women who are hearing what most of them already know, so.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this segment now is meant for the audience to ask any of the panelists some questions that they have. So if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll bring you the mic, or you can come up here and ask. So anybody have any questions? Harris? Okay, well, I'll kick it off. I actually have a question to Wes. You talked about getting everybody on the same page, right, and aligning everybody with the same views and values, and sometimes that can be very difficult. What are your specific strategies? How do you relay that to your student athletes and your coaches about getting them on the specific track to be on the same page?
So it starts with culture. Everything that we do is based on culture, and our culture is real simple. It's a culture that is listening and caring and meets people where they are to help them get to where they need to go, where they need to be, or where they want to go. So if you don't know where people are and it's not like a listening culture where it's like kumbaya, we sit around the fire and roast s'mores. It's a listening culture to find out where exactly is this individual as a coach, as a student athlete, as a staff member. Where do they want to go in their career? And how do you get them there? So I will say, and I'm going to embarrass Michelle, because I always do this. I love to embarrass Michelle. But my job is I want to make sure in the next 5 years, Michelle's ready to be an AD. Period, end of story. So when the AD jobs come open, and people in the AD carousel starts turning, she's in position to do that. My job is to make sure our head coaches, I know that they're not going to be with us forever, but I want to make sure each one of my head coaches is ready to take that next step when it's time. I've been able to hire 3 first-time head coaches: Mike Magpio in men's basketball, Justin Johnson in baseball, and Nikki Cannon in women's volleyball. So out of the 4 head coaches I hired, the 3 of the first 4 that I hired here in the last 2 years were first-time head coaches. They got an opportunity that they would not have gotten anywhere else. But then you have to pour into people. You have to pour into them every day. You have to make sure they understand you're with them, here's what we're doing, here's how we're going about it. You meet with your student athletes, you talk with your student athletes. You're at the games, and I'm not the AD who sits on high and sits back and evaluates. I am on the sideline yelling and screaming, and I'll be the loudest person in the room. Just like I am at my son's games, and my daughter's games, I will be there for our student athletes here. And then I think the final thing, when you look at culture and making sure everyone's aligned with the mission, you want to create a culture that is a culture of respect, right? And a culture of engagement, and a culture that's, fully engaging everyone in the program. And when you do that, what happens is you slowly start to see, which is what we've seen, which has led to our turnaround. Men's soccer just won the Big West title last weekend. Tomorrow night, we go semifinal round 1. It's the first time we've done it in 21 years. Our men's basketball team is poised, it's the best position they've ever been to win the league. Women's basketball won 8 of their last 9 last year and went to the semifinals in the Big West tournament. So last year, we knocked on the door. This year, I'm making sure with all those coaches, they understand their North Star is not by any means necessary. It's not by, win at all cost, but it is get to the last game of the year and win it. Because if you win the last game of the year, you're going to advance to the NCAAs. So that's how we work, but it's every single day. It's walking the floors, it's being at practice, it's doing the administrative work, it's connecting with your colleagues, it's making sure everybody knows, hey, we're in this together. And making sure that, and quite frankly, there will be people who won't make it. It's not for everyone. So I had to relieve several people of their duties when I took over 2 years ago. But you can't be afraid to do that, right? And we're better for it. So, and I always say, everybody makes their own choice on what they want to do. If they want to be there and they want to be in the boat rowing in the same direction, they'll do it. If not, find another boat. So.
Very good. Thank you so much. If anybody else has anything to add about that, it's a pretty good answer. You have a question? Go ahead and stand up.
For Mr. Westwood, how do you ensure equity and equality for your men's and women's teams?
So I think Michelle touched on it earlier, and I'll let Michelle kind of jump in here because, we look at their practice schedule, we look at their lifting schedule, we look at their class schedule, we look at their travel schedule, and we evaluate everything top to bottom, and we look at the ratios too. So there's different prongs with Title IX, and ours is in the percentage. So it's like, I think we were 58 to 42.
So it's the percentages is based on your student population. So if you have more women on your campus, then you have to have more opportunities for your women, and vice versa. So we're slightly elevated with our women. And also, when we ensure, remember, equitable does not mean equal. So we're talking to our coaches, we're talking to our women, but we're also talking to our men because we can't favor our women over our men either. And that's important to remember too, is Title IX gave women this opportunity, but it's not at the expense of our men. And that's why it's so important to educate the men, because it's about opportunity for both. And how we ensure that equitable nature is also by our presence. Are we giving enough attention to our women? Are we at their events just as much as them? What is his presence as our athletic director? And there's so much perception involved. Like, do they feel that their needs are met? We don't like to just talk about feelings all the time, but perception and what you see is important. It's valued, and we talk about culture and how we value our people, our women, as well as our men. They know they're valued, and they know that if they feel that there's something that's not equitable, they come talk to us, and our coaches come talk to us all the time, like, hey, like, or they try to use it to their advantage, like, I think at Title IX, I think I need this, and we have to look at that. And so it's a conversation. That's where it starts. We look at the numbers, we live in the data, because we have to report that. There are severe consequences if you are not in line with Title IX legislation. But it starts with a conversation with that culture, making sure we're available to our students and listening to their voice. Because even if the data says something, if the women or the men feel like they're not being treated or given the opportunities that they need, then we address that too.
And Michelle gave the example with our soccer programs, based on their practice time, the heat during the time of day, and making sure that they're able to flip each quarters, every quarter accordingly, so one team is not always in the worst position. It's a lot. There's a lot that goes into it, but it's all in the details. We live Title IX every day. We don't look at it as, oh my gosh, it's Title IX stuff. It's just ingrained in what we do. So that way we know. So when people come up and they have questions about it, a lot of times coaches will come in and they'll state something that's along Title IX in their mind. It's like, it's actually not a Title IX thing. So it's like just helping to educate them each step of the way on where things fall.
Max.
I have a question for Mr. Athletic Director. You talked about the soccer field and how you had to balance that out as well. So besides that, were there any other situations where you had to touch on a case? And looking back at it, how do you think you would have handled it for your
So I've probably in my career, I've dealt with well over 100 Title IX cases and dealing with field issues, that's in my time in the Pac-12, my time at Cal, and my time here. So last 15 or so years that I've been in college athletics, well over 100. I would say one that comes to mind was the non-UCR related was the women's field hockey issue at Cal. And I bring that up because it was well documented, and I'm not sure if you all remember that whole thing. Our field hockey coach came in. Their field was in disarray. There was a number of things going on, and there was construction going on. And we worked diligently to make sure that they had the right practice field, and because for a whole season we had to send them over to Stanford. Now, when you're at Cal, you don't want to send people to Stanford, right? It's like the worst thing ever, right? I'm like, all right, whatever. But it's like, for them, it's the worst thing ever. So they had to go 90 minutes across the bay, practice there, and then they competed in the America East Conference. If I'm going back a few years, I'm trying to remember. But there were 3 or 4 West Coast schools that played field hockey at the D1 level, and they all had to compete back east because all the field hockey teams were back east. So all of the things that they were dealing with every single day, and we battled the university administration day in and day out to say we need to build a field for them. Here's where we can find it. And we finally were able to build it on top of one of the parking garages and then built a new field on another garage. And in Berkeley, there's not a lot of space, so everything had to be shared use facility with the rec department on campus and athletics because they just didn't have space. At UCR, the majority of the Title IX issues that we deal with are around harassment, and around how students are treating one another. And those are the ones that we absolutely don't play around with. So like I said, in pretty much every case, if a person's been found on the wrong side of that, they've been dismissed. So I hope that answered your question, Max. So.
Hi, Anna.
So that was pretty straightforward. Once we get the information, we report it up, and I think everyone else here who's had to deal with these investigations knows that the things that they look at is what did you know, what do you know, when did you find out, and what did you do with it? And time is everything on that. So you can't have lapses in reporting. When there are lapses in reporting, that's when people get excoriated, in the media, et cetera. When we are informed of a Title IX situation, we take the notes, we send them up to our Chief Compliance Officer's office. We have great relationships with our Title IX investigators. And that's important because they need to know that we're not going to try to skew or steer an investigation or a situation one way or the other. And we tell all of our student athletes and all of our coaches, we make sure they understand the rules and what they should and shouldn't do. And if they veer left or right or center of that, it could compromise their career. So as we kind of move through that, we report it up. Campus will go through the investigation. Sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes it takes months. They are completely overmatched. There's too few investigators to a 25,000 student campus, and 10,000 staff, something like that. So when they're investigating stuff, sometimes it takes months for it to come back. But then when it comes back and we get the result, usually if the preponderance of evidence will lean in one direction or another. And then we don't, athletics, it should never investigate its own situations. It should always go through campus. And sometimes campus even brings in a third party to get involved.
And they'll make recommendations on action, but ultimately it is the AD's discretion. But we do not tolerate any Title IX issues in our department.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions?
I don't really have a question, more like a statement. It's more like a statement. Before I entered the room today, I wasn't really aware of what Title IX was. I just came in here because I'm sorry. But knowing that Title IX is something that women for 50 years have fought for, like you said, it was not that long ago. It really was like yesterday for us. That could have been us till to this day. So I'd just like to thank you guys all for continuing to do what you do. Like you said, you have to do this, you have to do that, just to make a report, or even just to fight something the way that you fight for soccer, to have not the sun in their face and be able to have the opportunity to play still. It sounds like you guys do a lot every single day, and it's like you've been for the past 50 years and you continue to. So I'd just like to thank you guys for doing that, and still till this day being able to come up here and talk to us about it and bring some acknowledgement to us, because like I said, I didn't know what it was, but now it changed my point of view of being able to play the sport that I play, being able to have the opportunity to.
like you said, when you were playing tennis, you had the opportunity to come here and then you grew from there. And that's like me, like I have the opportunity to come here and now I see myself as being able to improve and grow from being able to be here. So I just thank you guys for doing what you do.
Can I say something off that?
Of course.
It doesn't, and like just because Title IX happened 50 years ago doesn't mean it's over, right? I am challenging all of you now. Like Mr. Millett or AD Millett was right. Half the population isn't here because it takes the men's sports to also realize the impact that you all bring to the campus and to athletics and to education. So I'm going to touch on that first, that it's not over, right? So you all get to play, but that doesn't mean that you get to play professionally, right? Like your male counterparts, because Title IX only extends to the educational system. It doesn't extend to the professional system. So the things that you have to fight for here, you still have to continue that when you go into your professional world. So I don't want you to think that just because Title IX happened doesn't mean it's always going to be a cakewalk from here on out. Because if we look at it like women's sports in general get about 5% of the media coverage every year. And that has not changed in 30 years. That hasn't changed. And the only reason they get 5% is because the U.S. women's national soccer team is doing so well. Otherwise, that would be 3%. So the fact that you know this now makes it your obligation to continue the fight that we've been doing for 50 years, right? So that's one thing. The other thing that I will say, and thank you to ADs Williams and Millett, is that they have championed women in administration. That is not the case at every institution, particularly in CAA Division I and FBS schools. There is still a good old boy network of you get where you get because of who you know, not because of what you do. And so it takes the men in the room, it takes the male coaches, the male ADs to put us in positions where we can show our experience, where we can gain that experience, where we can get head coaching positions, right? When Clara was talking about in 1972 that there was 2 different divisions, 90% of women's sports were coached by women. Now that's less than 17%. So now women's sports are even being coached by men. And that's not to say that's bad. It's just we need the awareness and the experience to be able to do it. And that means advocating for yourself to be like, I belong here too. Think about all of the women who are NFL referees and NBA basketball referees and all of these people who have put themselves in positions where they can do that. Now that's your opportunity, right? And that's where you can take up the mantle and to continue to push. But it also takes, having your coaches and the other men in the room and the other men ADs step up for us women and say, we have just as much right and experience and opportunity to be here, and we can do the job just as well, sometimes if not better, than some of our male counterparts. And just because, we were given a set of different X and Y chromosomes doesn't mean we are lesser than. And so I think that's what you all have to continue to do, is to continue to push that agenda and say, I have every right to be here. I have every right to not just play my sport, but to sit in the classroom, to take this major, to have this job. And that's where you continue to push this Title IX into the next half century. And soapbox.
Go ahead, Coach.
I'm going to say something. I agree with you about the media coverage, but I'm going to say, oh, hi, Sarah. I'm about to talk about you. Stay right there. Mr. Nico Delabaye, he works his tail off to make sure that we get media coverage. What you did for these ladies, did you guys enjoy Media Day? Other ladies, did you guys get to do the Media Day yet? Not yet. It's incredible. The work that you did, the experience, you enjoyed it. We saw your faces all smiling. And the work that you did to put this panel together and this conversation about Title IX is incredible. So thank you very much. And Sarah, please stand up. This young lady works her tail off, and Nico created this whole media crew. I mean, they really, really work. So I want to recognize you, because our ladies don't get to see you all dressed up in the suit. You gotta wear polos and stuff. That's right. Incredible, and thank you so much, because this is
I just want to echo what's already been said, but a thing that you all can do in addition to continuing to advocate for yourselves and for other women is to support other women, right? Be at each other's games, cheer each other on. Women sometimes tend to become enemies really quickly, and it's so important for us to support each other and to be an advocate for one another. And a small but significant way you can do that is watch the WNBA. Yeah. Turn on the NWSL games that are on TV. Buy their gear, right? Like, make that investment, and maybe it's $60, maybe it's $100, maybe it's Paramount Plus versus CBS, whatever, but make that time to support women's sports. Show up for each other. Maybe think about a coaching career, right? Suzette coaches 2 sports. We have other women coaches here. We don't have enough of you. I went into administration. We need women in administration, but we also need women in coaching. Consider it, even if it's a youth league, right? Even if it's a high school team, right? If there's any place that you can find an opportunity to support women's sports, find it and do it, because that's important too.
I want to just touch on the coach staying in the game somehow, whether it's coaching, recruiting, reffing, administration, stay in the game somehow. I am one of 2 female head coaches at my institution currently, and we have 21 sports. And I coach 2 of them. Okay? So
Not where we want to be.
it's not where we want to be, and we are working towards getting there. But the point is that one of the best things that I think that has come out of the 25 years that I've been at the University of Redlands is the number of women that I have had in both my soccer and lacrosse programs who have gone on to coach, referee at various levels at the college level, and then also at the high school level, and they've stayed in the game. And that, to me, is probably the best thing, aside from watching them walk across the stage at graduation. So stay in the game, okay, somehow.
Any more questions? Harris?
It's not a question, but it was a comment. I really like that you guys said Title IX isn't about women's sports being over men's sports, but it's about equality, meeting that bar where men's sports and women's sports meet, and just practice being at the different times and equal to classes where people don't have to suffer and give up champions. And it's like that part.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, any of you guys can answer it. Do you guys have plans on educating the men or getting the word out to more men to make them more aware? Because I'm pretty sure a lot of them still don't know what this is. So, do you guys have any plans on educating them?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit because that's obviously near and dear to our hearts, and in the NCAA too. We don't just educate our students. We had the opportunity to speak with the Riverside Bar Association, so we talk about the legality of Title IX and why it's important. But we bring our men in, and during our compliance meetings and our academic meetings and our beginning of the year meetings, we have meetings like this, and we carve out time to talk about Title IX specifically and the opportunities in Title IX, but the responsibilities related to that as a male, as a female. But a lot does fall on our men sometimes because, as a student athlete, you're a role model. People are looking at you, and you have a responsibility to uphold the values and the characteristics of our department, but also your personal values. And so we educate our men. Why is Title IX important? Why are women equal when it comes to pretty much every aspect of life. And so we have these meetings with our men. We have meetings just with our men regarding Title IX to talk about why it's important and what their responsibility is with that too. So it's conversation. I say that over and over again. It's a conversation. And the more you're present and you converse with your students and you give them a voice, because we ask the men, what does Title IX mean to you? You guys should have another poster with the men or invite them to sign it too, because they may have moms or sisters or it may give them an opportunity too. So you don't know.
We also, where we see the real impact is when we talk about culture, where we see the impact is when our student athletes at other student athletes' games. That's the best part. Like when one team is playing, the student athletes who aren't traveling or are not in class, they're at their fellow student athletes' games. So, and the men are supporting the women, like the women are supporting, like all teams support one another. But that goes back to the culture we build. And, Peyton knows, as ADs, building culture, it doesn't happen overnight. Especially I think we took over right around the same time. I think, Peyton, 2 years?
Not 2 years yet, but getting there.
Yeah, so I'll be 2 years in basically 2 years in January. But anytime you take over a program, sometimes you have to shift that culture. And it is a monster, especially if you have, folks who've been deeply ingrained in it, which is why, making sure, again, the blocking and tackling. I would say if the student athletes can't compete, if they're not eating, if they're not well between the ears, mental health, and they're not physically fit and strength and conditioning isn't in place, and they're not doing well in school, it doesn't matter all the bells and whistles that you have, right? They have to be in a place where they can do the basics and be successful at that. That's the student experience and the student success. And then you work up to the coaches, and then to the administration, and then to the top of campus. So, to Michelle's point, we're making sure all of our kids, in the program are connected with one another. And that's why, now when we have an issue, it's people don't know about it per se because it's not, there are privacy laws around certain things, but when we do, we're able to address it and deal with it immediately. So we have very, very, very few, compared to what it was years ago.
Great. Peyton?
Yes. And quickly, the answer is yes, there's some process things that we have to do of making sure we're educating and providing the appropriate information at the right times with people. There is, I'll pause as the food starts coming in, but the rules education and the information, like to Wes's point about the NCAA rule, that information does go out. Our compliance folks do communicate out to our students about the harassment. Everybody signs the waiver talking about that they aren't going to commit those sort of issues or have issues with harassment. But the bigger discussions we're trying to get prepared and do, it's been unique to be on campus in this short amount of time and trying to get large groups together to have an entire department meeting and say all 500 student athletes all can be in one place. But with those things loosening up, we're looking at those options going forward. Separately to the points that people noted, I will say it's a problem for the percentage of coaches to be so low for female coaches coaching female teams. That is a problem. And it's something that is going to be generational and has to start with those who are currently playing and participating and having interest. Because even those, and something that people miss, is there's countless male coaches that coach that didn't play.
Right.
That are just interested, that just have a passion and stick around it. And so there's a lot of you that you're a small percentage of the female student athletes that you participated with in junior high and in high school. And you guys are part of the fortunate group to play in college. But there's countless women who have passion about sports. And continuing that and moving forward, there's all kinds of student organizations with the Women's Basketball Coaches Association, the Fast Pitch Association, the Volleyball Coaches Association, where you can sign up and be parts of those groups, where you can officiate. A lot of you probably already officiated volleyball and been the line person or been that. You already have the experience. You've already been around the game. You have more knowledge than the people who are watching that say, get the ball or hit the ball or make the shot or hit it or throw a strike. And if you look back now and you look at how young women are being coached, how young men are being coached, you guys can coach them. You guys can officiate their games. You guys can put together a league. You can put together a tournament. You can do all of the things that you have seen happen. And that's the next step. That's the next part of this. It isn't, I mean, it is the game itself, but it's the business around the game. It's the organization of the game that needs women, that will bring the change that people are looking for. When you're saying, hey, we have to balance out all of these things to make the experience right. I had time working at the NCAA, and they had separate committees, and they all made decisions. They all made rules. And they actually made rules that were different for men's and a women's sport. They had rules that were different for transportation. They had rules that were different for the game. They had rules that were different for recruiting. And they need more women to be able to come in to say, here are the needs. Here is what's next. And that voice starts now for you guys, but it also starts in just sharing the things that you know with other people that have that interest. Where, yeah, watch the games, support the games, but if you had someone you played with and you are fortunate enough to play here, they've decided to go on and start a business. Their business mind with your sports mind, and you guys get together, and now you have a league, and now you have a tournament, and now you put something else together, and now you're able to go forward with what's next. Or it's, hey, I want to do X, Y, or Z. This is that option with where you're at. Riverside's the best step for your next step is by coming here. And you can get that on the court, you can get that in the classroom, and you can get that for what you want your future to be here. And you have coaches around you, you have administrators around you where they will support you. And that's not just the ones that are in Tiger gear. That's the ones that are here from UCR, from Cal Baptist, from Redlands. If you have a passion and you have an interest, you have a panel of people up here that want to support you and be there for you and help you make the next step for your lives.
Perfect. And Nikki, comments? Then a couple more questions, actually. Go ahead, Nikki.
Okay, so when I was your age, I had no clue what I wanted to do, and I ended up going and getting a degree in like health science and hospital administration. I fell into this with just a phone call, and I can tell you, with all honesty, that this is the best job in the world. I cannot believe they pay me what they pay me to be able to do what I do. I am truly blessed, and you can ask anybody, because I say it all the time. I love my job. I literally cannot believe it. I would do most of it for free. Most of it. I've been here too long. They're not taking away now. But I mean, it is so much fun. I mean, what's better than waking up in the morning and being okay with where you're going? Okay. I mean, I cannot enunciate that enough. You know, for those of you that don't know what you want to do, you know, take some classes in it and see how you feel. But I mean, I truly do have the best job in the world. I mean that with all my heart. But we need more. We need more of us. Make it happen.
Ready to run through a wall now. Paris, go ahead.
One thing you guys mentioned was, I think it was the 52 to 48 ratio for.
Your percentage of,
Yeah. How would we be able to figure out what ours is? And
Ours is very similar. RCC is very similar. We have, excuse me, we have more women than men. And the interesting thing about Title IX, it's focused on the women, but when you get more men that are more women than men, you do have to really represent the underrepresented sex,
Right.
whether it's men or women. And that's part of figuring out, and I'm sure you guys at UCR have had to worry about that too, because you have more women there as well. But that's part of finding that balancing act and opportunity for everyone without discrediting one sex or the other.
But just be aware that that's only one prong.
Yeah,
Right,
That's
there's,
only one aspect of
there's
Title
multiple
IX.
prongs.
There's
more
three.
There's more than one way to meet the standard, so just be aware of that.
because if the school has a football team, there's no women's sport large enough to meet that standard. So they give you 3 prongs to meet as far as, one of those prongs you'll meet.
Shannon, you had a question.
Oh, not a question, but since we're talking about supporting women, we have a Title IX tip-off tournament today. We play at 7, first game's at 5, so especially the student athletes who want to support women, I want you guys all to come. Everyone can come, but especially you guys.
all right.
In the back.
I'm a business law major, and the last thing I want to do is step away from my sport. So how do we basically get into your shoes?
Sport law.
We could answer that. So,
Yeah.
So most compliance directors in the NCAA now have business and law backgrounds. Most ADs come from business backgrounds. So someone who's interested in business and law, that field is vital to our organization because athletics is a business. And so our other senior associate AD, he's a lawyer. And so you can work into athletics. I hire interns every year that are former student athletes because I want to give them an opportunity, and it starts in student development. But you go, you volunteer, you ask questions. But I could tell you, even our coaches represent so many different majors and departments. You don't have to have a specific degree to get into athletics. It's about a desire, a passion, and a really, really strong work ethic because we
Yes.
work our tails off. But we have fun, right? We have fun. So business law, I mean, that's a very, very sought after degree actually in athletics. So
There's a lot of athletic adjacent things too. So I started off as a nursing major, and I actually have a doctorate in educational leadership. How I got there was very different, but every opportunity where I could volunteer. So I have worked Super Bowls, NCAA Final Fours for both men and women, swimming and diving, track and field, every opportunity where I could volunteer. And you are near Los Angeles. Like the Los Angeles Sport and Entertainment Commission, as soon as I moved here, I joined it. In Indiana, I was part of the Indiana and the NCAA Sport and Entertainment Commission. So every time you can volunteer, that adds an experience. There are majors in sport management, a lot of, and if you're interested in that, I have a list of all of those, and just getting in courses that you can translate that experience, right? So sport and entertainment management, sport law, sport psychology, but volunteering and getting sport adjacent, then you find your way onto panels like this when you have relevant experience, and that's how you continue to get in these positions too. You're like, oh, I know that you volunteered for this, and so now you can help volunteer here, help Nico with gates, right? And all of the experience you can get on campus.
That's true.
There's so much experience that is athletic adjacent that will lead to these careers, because then you can be like, I have this experience doing this, and this. It's not just like an academic major.
don't forget, you guys know what transferable skills are? That your job is right now, you're a student athlete, but everything you're doing, you have leadership skills, you have motivation, and you have a strong work ethic that is unparalleled. And those are resume builders. You can put that. You can say that you were a team captain. So all this volunteer experience, that's what we do is we teach you, like, these are transferable skills to the workplace. What you're doing now are highly sought after skills, and people want to hire you just because of your experience, because they know you work your tails off.
I'm just going to say one last thing about that is the networking. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. I'm going to short story about a woman named Angela Baker. Okay, so Angela Baker, about 3 years ago, was in Pittsburgh. She was playing women's football. She was doing odd jobs and happened to be the stepdaughter of a friend of mine. And she reached out to me, her stepmom reached out to me and said, hey, do you think there's any jobs in coaching football anywhere? And I said, well, let me ask my football coach. And she came out and she was one of our assistant coaches, limited earnings assistant coaches last year. And you know where she is right now? She's with the Giants. She's in the New York Giants. The New York Giants, and she's also went and played for the women's national football team and played in the World Championships this last summer. So it was just by chance that she networked. You have all these people on this panel, all the other people that are in your department. It may not be through a softball coach. It might be through a swimming coach or a tennis coach or an AD, an SID, a professor. Network. Take opportunity, step out of your comfort zone, and give it a try, because you might find out that you find something that you love. I was going to go into medicine. Okay, took my MCATs, everything, and took coaching up at just as like, oh, okay, well, I'll do that to pay my rent. Well, 30 years later, I'm still doing it, and I'm loving it. Like you said, I wouldn't have changed it.
athletes know that our athletic director, Peyton Williams, is a former lawyer. Anybody know that?
You're still a lawyer. You just don't.
What do you get out there? Just networking and
Peyton
get
Williams,
to know
Esquire.
everybody here. But I know a lot of people don't know that. He's not just an athletic director. So, yeah, so. Anybody else want me to promote?
This is a better job, by the way. Just in case you're wondering.
It's true. I mean, being in this business as long as I have been, this is my 31st year here at Riverside. So I've been here a long time. I've seen a lot of things. But networking is huge, especially nowadays. So you have a whole panel you can network with. This is your beginning. So yeah, if you have any questions and I can help, I'll give you my email. I don't have any problem with that because I know you guys are the next generation that are going to take our spot. So in 20 years, you guys are going to be up here. And I'll be on a beach in Hawaii, so.
Perfect. Well, really quick, speaking about sharing information, this is our website right here, okay? rccathletics.com. If you go to the athletic department, watch it not work. If you click the athletic department, you go to the staff directory. This is just for RCC, but you can do this for the other schools. And you can see everybody listed here, okay? So there are phone numbers, our email addresses. Reach out because there's opportunity. My entire staff reach out to me directly here today capturing this event and everything that you guys do on the court and on the field. So there's opportunity out there. But I think unless there's any other questions, everybody just smelt the food. So I want to thank all of our panelists. Oh, one more? Oh.
I know basketball, like, that's like in their game time, but we have a game today and so 2 and 7:30. We basically have our own little squad. They're going on forward tournament, so we're excited. Our staff, like, we have all female coaches. Yeah. What time did you guys meet at? 2:30 and 7. Where?
It's on the other side of the street.
You can't put a price on that. That's so great. It's so great.
Okay, we'll share game times over food. How about that? Again, I want to thank everybody on our panel. This was, I think, very, very informational and very great. So once again, a round of applause for our panelists.
Yeah.